Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull once said that Phil Collins was the most talented member of Genesis. And at first, that sounds obvious, but the more you think about it, the less obvious it becomes. Because in a band like Genesis, what does talent even mean? Is it technique, songwriting, creativity, influence, or something harder to define? So I recently ran a poll about this, and the results were kind of interesting. Here they are. There's a clear leader, but also a bit of disagreement, and that's exactly why this question is worth asking, because depending on how you define talent, you can make a serious case for all four options. Before we compare anyone, we need to define a few terms, because talent in a band isn't just one thing. It can mean technical ability, compositional skill, originality, emotional impact, versatility. And Genesis is one of those rare bands where these qualities are split across all of the members, which makes this video less of a ranking and more of a perspective. So let's start with Phil Collins. There's a reason he led the poll and is still leading the poll and probably will win the poll, because as a drummer all alone, he was already elite, but then he became the lead vocalist. He was also a songwriter, a global solo artist. When it comes to Phil Collins' versatility, there's usually no doubt about how he was able to master so many different roles. But there is, of course, one chapter in his career that stands out as kind of a dark spot, which is when he sat in with Led Zeppelin at Live Aid. A very popular video discussing his role and what he thought of the experience, but also have a very special video in the members section that includes why Robert Plant chose him to play at Live Aid and how important Phil Collins was to Robert Plant's post-Led Zeppelin career. So if you're interested in that story, check it out in the members section. Collins' versatility is almost unmatched by anybody. He could drive complex rhythms, deliver pop precision, and connect emotionally with massive audiences. So if talent means range, then Collins is the obvious choice. Then there's Peter Gabriel. Where Collins represents versatility, Gabriel represents vision. He redefined what a frontman could be. He was theatrical, conceptual, and above all, experimental. Later, he pushed boundaries in his own solo work with world music, production innovation, storytelling. So if talent means originality and artistic identity, then Peter Gabriel becomes very hard to beat. Tony Banks is the most overlooked in conversations like this, but musically, he might be the foundation of Genesis. His keyboard work shaped the harmonic language of the band, the emotional tone of their music, the compositional structure of many of their songs. He wasn't just adding parts, he was defining the sound. And not only that, he was working to define what synth pop and 80s keyboard music could be. Remember, that the time the new technology became available, musicians were either threatened by it or embraced it. And in this case, Tony Banks didn't just accept or embrace new technologies, he pushed them just about as far as they can go, and his innovations hold up today. So if talent means musical architecture, then Banks has a very serious claim. Mike Rutherford is often a quiet contributor in these discussions, but his role is really important because he provided structural balance, songwriting continuity, adaptability across eras, and he was there through all phases of Genesis. So if talent means cohesion, longevity, solidity, Rutherford deserves far more credit than he usually gets. So looking back at the poll, it's not surprising to me at all, and it's probably not surprising to you, that Phil Collins is in the lead. He's clearly the most visible, the most commercially successful, most versatile. The fact that nearly half the audience chose someone else tells you something important. People aren't just voting on popularity, they're voting on where they really believe talent is. And that's the key to this whole question, because there isn't a single objective answer. There's only the definition you bring to the question. If you value versatility, you'll probably pick Phil Collins. If you value vision, you'll probably pick Peter Gabriel. If you value composition, you might pick Banks. And if you value structure, you might pick Rutherford. Each one represents a different kind of musical intelligence. This is what made Genesis unique. They weren't built around one kind of talent. They were built around multiple forms of it working together. And that's why the question is so interesting today. Not because there's a clear winner, but because there isn't. So now I'm curious, has your answer changed, or are you even more convinced than before? Let me know in the comments who you feel is the most talented member of Genesis. And if you enjoy this kind of breakdown, subscribe, because we're going to keep exploring what makes great musicians great. Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers. When Plant stepped into the 1980s as a solo artist, he faced a question no one talks about enough. Who do you choose to replace the irreplaceable? His answer surprised a lot of people. He chose Phil Collins. And this led not only to some of Robert Plant's most distinctive solo work, but also to the disastrous Live Aid reunion. And today we're going to look at exactly why Plant picked Collins and how this decision impacted that legendary and ill-fated show. So right now, let's listen in to what Robert Plant had to say about Phil Collins and his impact on Plant's solo effort.
To have a drummer, after working with John since I was 16 or whatever, to turn around and see somebody else there, it's kind of a bit of a weird thing to be thinking about. Phil Collins turned up. He'd been such a huge fan of John's work, and he fired every session and blasted the room with butane and energy. He got on everybody's case if people were slack, if it wasn't quite on it. He would be standing up and making points with his drumstick and frowning that frown across the room.
When Bonham died in September of 1980, Led Zeppelin ended immediately. That's important. They made it clear that without Bonham, there was no Led Zeppelin. So when Plant launched his solo career in '82, he wasn't trying to recreate the past, and this is where Phil Collins really enters the picture. Plant's observation that Phil Collins just appeared at the right moment on the drum kit, bringing energy, discipline, and forward motion when he needed it most, is the biggest clue we have as to why Phil Collins became so important